Welcome to another episode of Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. In this episode, I talk to Mac, the serial SaaS entrepreneur. Mac delved into SaaS around 2006-7. Despite numerous app ventures that didn't gain traction, he hit his success in 2018 with Castanet, a LinkedIn outreach automation tool, growing it to 61K MRR in only 2.5 years as a solo founder before exiting. Now living abroad as a digital nomad with his family, Mac is involved in various projects and he is also helping founders who bootstrap with mindset and strategy and collaboratively creating a guide to families with his wife. So I hope you enjoy the show. Mac, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ash. That was beautifully. That was very articulate and concise and thorough and well said. It's
Oh,
nice.
thank you. Great stuff. So, do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you want to share with us?
I think it changes frequently depending on kind of what I'm thinking about and struggling with. I have a friend KP on who's very active on Twitter, and the other day he put up something so simple, and it just said everything is figure outable.
Mm.
And I don't know if that was him or someone else came. I don't know where it came from, except that I saw his tweet and I was like, that's so simple and beautiful. And it is just sort of encapsulates everything that I sort of love about what I do, which is like solving problems and trying to figure out some new challenge. And just to remind myself that everything is figure outable, it helps me just like
There
get
you
to
go.
the next thing.
The
So
hustler spirit, right? Great stuff. So let's talk about your story. Where did it begin, and how you came up with these multiple SaaS ideas? What is the strategy you follow to come up with these ideas? And then, did you had some sort of like a patch in your life where you were not getting too much of traction, and then suddenly you found this holy grail of traction where you got this new SaaS in your life which helped you out to get into 61K MRR. So how did it work? So share with us, share with our listeners.
yeah, well, let's see. There was kind of a long trajectory up to that, but I mean, it started in, well, I'm aging myself here, but in the year 2000 is when I graduated college, and it was at the end of the dot-com boom, and
Mm,
I got hired at Adobe having very little experience, really. Like, I just kind of taught myself some computer things. I don't know. I just saw a friend of mine that was building websites, and I thought that was cool, and I like design, and I started to get in there and build some things, and that was the time of like Macromedia Flash, which, depending on how old you are, you may or may not remember. But it was just people were making some really cool sort of animated websites and things with interactivity and stuff. And I just thought that was so cool. And so I gradually taught myself to code so that I could do that. And then just early 2000s saw like little pieces of individuals making like really simple things online that were selling for like $5 or $10. And at the time they were like, here's a PHP script that'll be like a little MP3 player. Like, you buy the script and you install just these little things like that. And I was like, wow, this is cool. People are just sitting behind their computer coding things and starting to make money off it. And then time went on, and 2006, 2007, you started to see like Rob Walling and all just like different people, Patio 11, Patrick
mm,
McKenzie, and things like that. Early days of people starting to like get into SaaS, but just all of it, like just figuring out how to make money at all
mm,
with coding and building things just like out of thin air. I just always like some idea that you can turn into something online and make money. And so I was fascinated by it, and so I started doing anything. Like I built iPhone games. I built like little stupid iPhone apps that really didn't do anything. It was just like, oh, I'll put an ad on this. It's kind of funny.
mm,
So like little utilities online, and then eventually I quit my job that in 2011, I believe I quit my Adobe job finally after, I
Mm,
mean, I say finally because I wanted to do this so badly, but I was in a good situation. It was hard to let it go when I had no other revenue. But I spent 2 years on a SaaS app on my own of just
mm,
like thinking that I could make it go. I was like, how hard can this be? If I have full time on it, I'll figure it out. And I didn't. I spent 2 years on it, just spending a bunch of savings trying to living off of it. And I had two customers, I believe. It was $100 each, and one of them asked for a refund.
mm,
And then my wife and we had our first kid coming, and I had to go. So I just kept building, and decided to immerse myself in the startup scene to try to learn more about, see how other people were doing it. And I just never stopped
mm,
building on the side. And I tried to, you know, scratch my own itch with apps. I tried to build something around my hobbies, which were, like music and playing instruments and cycling and things like that. I just never found any, I could never really put it together.
mm.
Uh, so anyway, I tried all these kinds of things. And finally, in about, I think it was early 2018, I decided, I was like, I'm going to take a whole totally different approach. I'm going to not care at all what the app is. I'm going to go start. I mean, you hear this a lot now, but it's like start with the problem. Like start with go find the people first that have a problem. And
Yeah.
so I just decided I'm going to go in with no idea, no intention, no intentional direction other than to just see if I can find a group of people that have a common problem. And so I
Mm,
reached out to a handful of people, friends or people that at least acquaintances, people that knew who I was, and I went with people who either owned a company or ran an agency or were higher up in some company, and so I reached out to them and asked them for coffee. So they're all local people, and people said yeah. People say yes. A lot of people. I say that because a lot of people are afraid. They're like, I don't want to bother someone and ask them to. Most people don't mind, especially this is also why you start with friends. And so I had these conversations, and I quickly narrowed it down to sales teams because I realized that they have money that they're not afraid to spend. Um, and then it kept going and narrowed it down. And so I just ended up having conversation after conversation, and I'd go back and take notes and have more conversations and just kept narrowing it down. And so really, that was the process that led to my most successful app. And I think that process was a massive contributor. Like that is the massive differentiator between
mm.
how I had done it previously and all the
Yeah.
things that went nowhere. I think there's more to it than that now, sort of in hindsight. I think there's just so much luck. I think there's timing. I think there's all these other things, but certainly that is a big piece of why that became
Yeah.
successful. So by the time it was months of doing these interviews, and finally I settled on something and spent 4 weeks coding it. And by the time I had anything ready, I had a whole bunch of people that I had talked to that knew what I was doing. And so I had people ready to swipe their cards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is what a lot of founders don't understand. Is like they come up with an idea and it's, oh my god, this is a so freaking beautiful, amazing idea. It's gonna make me billionaire. And then they put hours and hours and months and years into it, and then the product comes out, and then crickets. Nobody's coming because there's no problem to solve. And so Mac, this is a really good learning. You have gone through all of this yourself and overcome with all this, founders myths that, okay, if I keep working on the idea, then it's gonna work, not realizing that there is a pain. Would you elaborate on the process you took to figure out the problem? Because that's something which could be very crucial to our listeners, because most of them are founders. I would like to know more about how did you did it step by step, so that if a founder is listening to our podcast and they're in the same stage, they can take some insights from you.
Yeah. So I think there's two. pieces. I mean, I think your question is sort of around, I take it as like the types of questions I asked and how I navigated those conversations.
Sure. Sure.
I think even before that, I want to just kind of reiterate like because I do have a lot of people reaching out that are like, how do I get those conversations?
Mm.
And so while some of us, I mean, I'm an introvert too, that was kind of a scary thing to me at first. But again, that's why we start with friends that don't need to be embarrassed or ashamed to reach out to. But then asking for intros after that, and asking it in just like a friendly, like I never felt like I needed to like really offer them anything. I mean, I would buy them coffee, but I think I just want to make it clear most people are friendly, and if someone doesn't want to do it, they will say so, and that's okay. But
Mm.
most people are more than willing to give you 30 minutes. And let's be honest, people like to talk about themselves and their problems and their work and their processes, and most people are willing to do it. And and actually, if you find out that most people are saying no, then like look at what industries they're in and say, oh, you know, restaurant industry people are really hard to get a meeting with. That's going to tell me something that's probably not an industry I want to go after if I can't even get like a few minutes of their time.
Mm.
So beyond getting the conversations, it is actually, there's a wonderful book out now called The Mom Test, which was not
Yeah.
out when I did this, but like that, I would suggest anyone who's in this process should read. Even honestly, I've read like the first 25 or 30%, and that was enough for me to get like the gist. And it made me realize like, I know this stuff works because I did a chunk of this.
Mm.
And I didn't even do it to the full extent of how he describes it. So he describes it beautifully. But much of it
Mm.
is around, a lot of people come and say, hey, here's my product. What do you think? Look at this. Take a look. Would you use it? It's the wrong way, because it's hard to say no to that. It's hard to say no to tell someone sitting across the table from you that you don't like their idea or it's not valuable. So
Mm.
it's asking them, I mean, especially the way I was coming at it which was without a product idea, but it's what's your day like? What are your processes like? What software do you use? What's the worst part of your day? What part of your day do you dread the most? What
Mm.
part of, if there's like one part of your job that you could not have to do, what is it?
Mm.
What are like easy things that you have to do that like that you shouldn't have to do, meaning like that you don't need some expertise to do? Or what kind of things do you have an assistant do or outsource, or all these kinds of things that are like,
Mm.
because those are kind of questions that trigger pain, right? Like, oh, I have to generate that report again today once a month. I hate my report day, or whatever, And so those things kind of lead to pains. It's remembering that the conversation needs to be about them, not about you, not about your product, not about your assumptions, not about any of that.
Mm.
Uh, and I also think that there's like a real art into uh, sort of interpreting what people say.
Mm.
And so this could be anything from like, I mean, first of all, one obvious thing, like people say, oh, what would be cool? Whenever someone says, what would be cool, I don't really listen to that. I don't want cool. I'm not trying to build cool. Like, I'm trying to build value, right?
Mm.
So a lot of it's easy to come up with like cool ideas, things think people would think is cool, but just, and also people don't always know. Like some people you can ask their kind of problems, like how can I make your processes easier?
Mm.
They're actually, I would say most people's brains, or at least the people that I talk to, like their brains don't really they don't know what to do with that. Like a lot of people don't know how. They're like, no, my processes are as smooth as they can be.
Mm.
uh, and that's almost never the case. So I don't know. I don't have like a step-by-step on how to do that, other than like the more of those conversations you have, the more you can start to figure out like where to dive deeper. Even just like, tell me more about that, more about that, more about that. Get them to talk more, because you'll start to
Mm.
uncover a lot of things that aren't surface level. And so it's sort of all to say is like, it's not as simple as like thinking that you can send a 3-question form to a bunch of people and get
Yeah.
the answers you need. It's really like diving deep and trying to help them navigate to where the pains are. So
Sure, sure. So let's come back to this portion later. But what I want to know more about is like, let's talk more about Castnet, because you have proven that you can deliver the value, and then that you got acquired. So when you had that epiphany, did you look into the market where there were other products? What was going on, and what did you see from your research and talking to your customers that encouraged you to move ahead with the idea of customer?
so I knew that, I mean, it became very clear that sales teams, there were some other things that happened along the way of generating leads. So I was talking to sales teams. I had one guy who was like, I'm looking for the leads of this specific type. And I
Mm,
was just like, let me just see if I can build that. Let me see if I can get those for you. They had very specific criteria. Like, I want a hospitality industry that I want of this size and these locations, and I want the sort of generic email. It's like info ad or service ad or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, let me see if I can get those for you. And so
mm,
this was a process that I went through to see, like, maybe there's a product here. But
mm,
what happened was I went home, and in a few hours I realized, like, oh, I can actually write scripts to get this. I can do this. It was all this scraping and using APIs and all this crap.
yeah.
And we basically very easily made a deal. It was like, it was like 10,000 leads or something for $5,000. The guy wrote me a check for $5,000 without even thinking about it. So that was just like one of the things along the way that was like, sales teams are cool. That was the easiest $5,000 I've ever made.
Mm,
And then going further down, like, that told me lead generation is valuable. And I,
mm.
mean, I think we can all agree that lead generation is valuable now. And I mean, even in 2018, but
With
it's like,
but yeah.
there's money here. These people don't have a problem writing checks. So I knew that. And then I knew lead generation was valuable. And then I had a guy, it was a long process of kind of narrowing in on it, but he was like, oh, and it was kind of the last stage of like solidifying the idea. And he was like, if you had that right now, I'd give you my credit card for like $800 a month or something. And I was
Mm,
just like, you never know that that's actually going to happen until you're swiping the card. But it was enough. Like, in everything I knew leading up to that, I was like, all right, let's do this. So I
yeah.
went and I built it.
Mm,
But I mean, and I spent 4 weeks on it, which, is, no one wants to lose 4 weeks of work for nothing, if that was the worst case. But like, it wasn't that much time. So,
mm,
it was just by having enough conversations and enough people kind of agreeing that, like, this was valuable and that if I could solve this. There was one other tool at the time that I was aware of doing it, and that was it. And so, it's funny because at the time competition scared me. Now I think now I'm scared if there is no competition. Um, but yeah, so I knew of one, and now there's a ton of them. But
yeah. So that's interesting, because let's take a hypothetical question. Like, I interview a lot of founders who come up with different SaaS ideas, and they're on a different stage. So for example, I was with a friend in a bar the other day. He was working on a new idea for construction company, the construction company in UK, and housing problems in all Europe and etc. If you are building a SaaS product, by after all this learning in your on your past, all your learning in the hindsight, what approach you will take in order to come up with a SaaS idea in construction company, for example, or if you want to take any other space, I don't mind. Would you be able to give some tips?
so if I have an industry in mind, how would I come up with a valuable idea?
Yeah. So for example, when I spoke with him in the bar, he said that he actually started reaching out to people on LinkedIn who work in construction company, and started giving them £100 of Amazon voucher for their 1 hour. And he
Sure.
interviewed 20 people who were proper project managers working in big construction companies, and he got lots of insights from those interviews.
Yeah.
Is this a right approach, or do you think it should have been in different direction?
I think that's a very valid approach. And I think, I mean, that's essentially what I did. I mean, I didn't offer vouchers, and um, I started with friends. So, and then took referrals, but the same idea, right? And,
Mm.
I think what you're doing there, and then it comes down to like asking the right questions. And if you can you but what you're doing is discovering if you can get in front of the market in the first place. Yeah, you're offering them $100 instead of in the future you'll be asking them for $100 or whatever. Um, so there's different, but even that is telling you that, okay, first of all, I know where to find these people. They're on LinkedIn. I'm actually surprised construction people are on LinkedIn. Depends, I guess, what they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
but a lot of times we think that, oh, I'll figure out the marketing later. Like I hear that all the time. I'll figure that out later. No, no, no. Like start with the hard part. See if you can even get a free conversation. See if you can even get an email address. So anyway, I think that is a totally valid approach. There's some
Mm.
other really fascinating approaches too that I see people doing. Danny Postma was talking. He talks about how his approach is like he doesn't like marketing, or he doesn't want to do marketing, or he likes to rely on SEO as his marketing. And so he will start with like just doing deep keyword research and finding underserved keywords uh, that and then figuring out, like he'll spend days doing keyword research and then figure out a product around that, because he
Mm.
knows that he can rank for this keyword and that people are already searching for it. And so that, he's like, if I know generally how much traffic I can get if I can rank on the first page for these keywords. And if I charge this much, here's the sense of how. That's a totally valid approach, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's a nice strategy. Yeah.
and then there's another guy, Peter Askew, who does a very similar thing, except it's with domains. Like he finds expired domains that they're already like have good domain authority, or that already have a bunch of inbound links, and they'll then come up with a business around that. So there's all these very different, I mean, or just going and building on an existing marketplace where there's going to be, I mean, there are risks with all of this, but like sometimes it's, I mean, with a marketplace, yeah, you'll have to build it up front and lose some time there, but you can potentially not have to do any marketing and just leave it there and see what happens. And you don't really have to do much more after that, unless you need to maintain it and support it. So, I mean, I know several people who do that. They just literally just build things on marketplaces, shove them up, and they make $1,000 here and there a month off it. So, but yeah, I would say my feeling is that probably the most time consuming approach is what we're talking about with going and having all these conversations. But I would also say it's probably, if you do it right, the most guaranteed way to hit on something.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's
Definitely.
like a bunch of benefits to this, right? Like having these conversations, you're proving that you can get in front of the market, the audience. You're proving as much as you can that like you found a common pain point among these people. And then by the time you're ready to launch something, you've got a whole bunch of warm leads and people that started off as cold. I always think of it as like, if I start off talking to my friends, they're already like sort of warm leads. And then they introduce me to people and those are cold leads. But by the time I've met them and had a call with them, they're kind of warm. So like by the time I have dozens of these conversations and I'm ready to launch something, I've got 50, 100, however many people to let know right away and start
That you
sweating
build it. Yeah.
and talk about it,
Yeah.
So that kind of kills a lot of birds with the one stone right there, taking that approach. But it's
Mm.
also for everybody. It's hard. It's a hard
Awesome.
process.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next one then. What are the different SaaS products you're working right now, and what their who's your ICP and who you're catering to?
So one of them is well, yeah. So I have one that's called Aware. It's a LinkedIn. It lets you make custom LinkedIn feeds. So if you want to, it's more for just engaging. So it basically just puts the posts of whoever you want to monitor, engage with in one place, so you can comment and engage in one place. It's kind of the main purpose, and it's used for sales teams who are trying to just get in front of their ICP, their target audience, or anyone growing on LinkedIn. But the LinkedIn feed is very difficult. Like you can't customize it. And if you want to monitor certain people, so that's what that does. It's just a small slice of kind of my time right now, and I have a co-founder with that. And honestly, right now, I have started a newsletter called the SaaS Bootstrapper a little while ago, and I am just having a lot of fun with that. And that it's just sort of, it's a whole new set of challenges, honestly, of like, I mean, it's just capturing an email instead of a credit card even, but it's, you know, having good writing and trying to market that and get in front. So I'm really using that as like, I mean, I'm using it to build an audience and to make friends, but it's also really just like a fascinating marketing challenge, honestly, to be honest. And then beyond that, I am working with a friend of mine who I recently met online in Poland, and we're in very early stages, but the business is called User Spark, and we have a bunch of little prototypes we've got so far, but it's really around how to help people sort of validate and create virality around like early, sort of help people validate their early stage ideas and get the word, you know, spread the word out, like encourage people to refer, spread the word early on, and then beyond that, like after launch, how to kind of help create virality around that. And so it's so early stage that I can't really define it too much more than that, not only because we're still just sort of exploring it, but you know, a lot of how I grew my last SaaS app and how I see other people doing well is by like finding product market fit and then getting others. And for Alex Hormozy fans, he talks about this all the time. Like the best thing you can do is get other people to sell for you. And that doesn't really mean hiring salespeople, but like finding advocates, finding agencies, finding resellers and affiliates and all these things to help spread the word. So working on some stuff around that, which is
Awesome.
super fun. So
Awesome.
just, you know, just just making sure that I have a good time every day and doing some things on my own and some things with other people, and just exploring ideas with with people and making a
Sure.
lot of new relationships online and seeing what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in learning more about this newsletter you started. Is it what kind of value it provides to the subscribers?
So it is called the SaaS Bootstrapper, and it's really about, it's two things. It's about my journey that we've been talking about, you know, all the way, all the things that I tried and failed at, and up to 61K MRR, and then selling and why I sold and all this. But then what I'm doing now, and sort of hindsight, things that I learned. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happened with that I didn't really realize it until later on, right? Like why that worked, or maybe I thought that this was why it worked, and I don't. So everything I learned through that, and then what I'm trying now, because my whole sort of approach to my businesses now is different than what it was then, and so I'm kind of, it's sort of like a behind the scenes into what I did and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And, you know, I'm working on some stuff now, like really trying to expose why I'm making the decisions I make every day. So, you know, I try to provide value where I can, and doing, you know, I do a lot of just like free, you know, responding to people's questions, but also some consulting calls. And, I just, with the newsletter, I have surveys in there, and I'm able to see where people are in their journey and where they're stuck. And so much of it, like 80% of it, is like not knowing where, these are their words. Like, I don't know where to start. I can't find an idea, or I'm building it and I don't know what to do now. So I'm really just trying to help with that. And so one of the things I'm working on is, well, I'm calling it a course about mindset, and I don't know if that's what it's going to be called. Bootstrapper's Mindset is what I'm calling it in my head, but it's really just like around helping. I think the biggest hurdle with this is like people start off with these big expectations, or they're trying to go really big, or they're trying to find one huge idea, or they expect results too soon and all this. And it's just, and then you hear stories of like my success story or anyone else's success story, and that's what gets highlighted. And you see all this, you're like, why is everyone else, how are they all succeeding? And what's wrong with me? And I'm trying to help people like understand the reality of all this, which is like, we all, it's a long journey for most of us. And there's almost every success started with a ton of failures. And so these are all the things I'm trying to just kind of help people with wherever they are. And it's
Indeed,
also,
indeed, indeed. The posts we see about the success stories, they're not overnight. They take like years and years. Some people take more than 10 years to actually reach
yeah,
to the place where they can even draft a post on social media saying, okay, we got that much success. But it's really tough.
it's true. But the other thing is like, often, what I also think, I mean, for me is like, things can change very, very fast. Things can change overnight. Like none of this stuff happens. There's like a lot leading up to it, but like, so my SaaS Bootstrapper logo, like graphic on all my social media is like this dotted line that's just flat for so long, so long, so long. And it's just, and then finally it just skyrockets and jumps up. And I think so often, if you look at these MRR charts or people's history, like that's exactly what it looks like. It's just, it took me 7 years of nothing, or like maybe some little spikes, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
And so not to say that people should expect that, but it's just like, that is often the way. It's just like, you just have to grind it out. And right when you think you're about to quit is often, I don't know if that's true, but sometimes I think that like right when you think you're about to quit, it's because you're so close that you're like, I don't know, just keep going. And then I mean, I see it all the time, is like people on Twitter, especially. I mean, that's where I am most active, but I just see people, grinding it out, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like, wow, there they go. They just did it. They went from 1K MRR to 40K this month, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it
I
takes a
see
lot.
that those tweets and posts on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a
great.
lot of people some people hate the MRR screenshots, and I get it. I do wish people would share more of like kind of what leads up to it. And that's what I try to do. I try to talk. I mean, I have big threads about like all the many years. Like it's embarrassing for me to say how many years I was uh, attempting to make money online at all before I actually did. So
Yeah, yeah, great. Right. So Mac, throughout your journey and experience, there must have been some valuable lessons learned. If you don't mind sharing, could you reflect on your experiences and tell us about one mistake or a setback you encountered along the way that you now consider not really a regret, but a lessons learned? And additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
I think overall, um, there's so many things that kind of pop into my mind. I think, my approach, or like for so many years, was trying, like, I already touched on it sort of, is like trying to find one idea. Like, I got to find the idea. And I would spend forever trying to find the idea. And I felt like if I went all in on it, I could make it happen. And my strategy now is very different. It's trying sort of a bunch of things at once, or much more rapidly. And I think, I sometimes we look down upon the shiny object syndrome and trying to switch from one thing to the next. And part of it, I think, like, we make it really hard on ourselves at times. Like I remember like getting kind of like wondering what was wrong with me, that I kept like giving up on something or moving on to the next thing. But
Mm,
I really think that that's actually really valuable and important. I think it's the same with reading a book. Like I don't think we need to force ourselves to read all the way through some book if we're not enjoying it. I'm not saying that like building an app, like if it's that it's always going to be fun, but I guess that like sometimes we just have to crank through things and be okay to like move to the next thing. And I picture it often now like a it's just kind of like driving down the road on like with like, you know, fully inflated tires on a newly paved road versus like flat tires in an old truck on a big gravelly road. It's like I look back at a lot of the projects that I've made, which is dozens, and I with most of them I kind of feel like, you know, if I had stuck with it long enough, I probably would have gotten to the end of the road, but it would have been really bumpy and really brutal, and it wouldn't have been fun. And it, you know, and then there's other times where you try something else, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, like whoa, like that happened really fast. Like that was much easier. There's a lot less friction. So that's what I try to do now. People, you know, I think they'll say like hire fast, fire fast too, right? And it's like it's kind of similar as like finding that balance, but not feeling bad when like something is really feeling like you're grinding and you feel like, oh, here's the reason why I don't feel like I should pursue this anymore, is to like just take it as a lesson and keep moving on. And you know, sunk fallacy, what is it? Sunken fallacy of like feeling like, oh, well, I've invested this much time in it, I don't want to give up now. Like that's a really hard thing to let go of if we've invested, but it's just not worth. So I don't know. It's kind of long answer to your question of, but I just think being able to just keep trying things, and the more you try, the more you notice like some things there's a lot of friction and other things there's less, and just
Mm,
finding the right balance for you. Because for me, I also have this other saying that I think about a lot, which is like starting at the beginning of a project, I have like a bunch of hope, right? There's like all this hope, like, oh, all the things that it could be. And that hope only lasts so long. I have to turn it into momentum. And
mm,
that momentum can be some promise of like some big customer or some payments. I'm getting customers, I'm getting signups, I'm getting all these things. And it starts to feel like momentum. And that's what keeps me going. Because
mm.
if I don't get any of that, the hope crash dies, and I don't have it. I have no energy for it anymore. So I have to turn that hope into momentum before the hope goes away. So,
Vanishes. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, uh, so I don't know. That's that's
Resilience and consistency. That's
sure,
what your message is. Yeah.
sure,
Great
yeah.
stuff. Okay. Awesome. So we should go into our lightning round now.
Okay,
So I've got six quick fire questions for you. So just try to answer them as quickly as you can.
great.
Right. Okay. Number one, what's one of the best pieces of business advice you have received from someone else?
Uh, be yourself and trust your gut. Trust your gut, because I think we can often be persuaded, see what other people are doing, and think that that's the right way, and
Mm,
then we're, you know, yeah. Trust your gut, and if you feel like something should be done differently or whatever, like probably onto
do it
something.
differently. Yep. Okay. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Well, can I give two?
Hmm.
So the one that is sort of changing my life right now on sort of a personal level is called The Mind Illuminated, and it's about meditation. It's I've meditated on and off my whole life, but never very consistently, and never in a confident way, if that's, or I just, but this book, Mind Illuminated, has just changed the game for me. So I'll leave that one at that. I highly recommend it if meditation is at all interesting to anybody. And then, well, Alex Hormozy's books are going to have to be for $100 million leads, or yeah, $100 million offers, and then the latest one is $100 million leads. I'm going to give them both because they really, for any part of wherever you are in building a product, making offers, and getting to the core value, and pricing, and just everything like that. Those books are just jam packed with value.
Yeah, I have seen some summaries of 100 million leads, I think, on YouTube, but I haven't had a chance to read it, so I'm gonna add that into my list.
It doesn't take long, and it's I mean all of his content's amazing, honestly.
Mm,
YouTube, everywhere.
great.
But it's some of the best.
Mm. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Uh, the ability to not give up,
Mm,
not quit, because I think that is the ultimate. Like that's if there's like one key ingredient, I think it's that.
mm,
I think it's being able to
totally.
just keep going, and we all feel defeated at times, but being able to get back up and try again.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Okay, what's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
It's thinking about what is actually going to move the needle that
Mm,
day, focusing on that. So I do it two ways. I mean, I do this. I'm like a big note taker. I've got my notebook here. It's like in lists. I have to get everything out of my head, and I do it multiple times a day. And there's sort of two parts to it, and it starts with like at night, like when I go to bed, knowing what I'm doing the next day helps me a lot, so that I know when I wake up, my mind can be on it. Um, but also just like knowing what will move the needle, and it really helps me push away the things that aren't important, or the things that, like, if I'm procrastinating on something, like uh, what's important is what is going to move the needle. If I've got one thing I can do today,
mm.
what is that? What is going to change the business? What is going to get me more customers? What is going to get me closer to launch? What is going to get
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I couldn't agree more because I have got my founder's journal too.
there you go?
It's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I've
is it
got like, you know, amazing things in it because every day, I don't know if you can see it,
yes, a
you
little
can
bit.
actually put your days with time boxing. It's amazing. I'm using it from last many, many years. And this was one of the things which my dad taught me. And I recently created it and I published on Amazon. So using it.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, next question. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had the time?
Um, hmm. I mean, one thing I've been looking for, and I'm surprised it's not out there. And if you know of it, maybe tell me. But so I've been making videos for YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and it's just me, and I don't make the time to edit them very much. But someone sent me, they were basically trying to sell me their editing services, and so they took my video. I have a pinned video on Twitter, and they took that video and they just did some light editing and put little sound effects and little like icons and little graphics here and there. Just like a lot of TikTok and YouTube videos have. But I can't find like an AI tool that does it. And maybe there's all the AI tools that put captions in that do these things, but and that do like these sort of automatically zoom in and zoom out and pan and all this stuff. But I haven't found one like you would think with. I mean, if we can read the caption, or, it knows the caption. So take some keywords and then take some sort of stock graphic or image or sound effect and toss those in there. And I would think that AI could um, generate a pretty cool little edited uh, gra- uh, video with some little graphics and sound effects for you.
Hmm.
So nothing too far fetched. That's what I've been looking for that I can't find. I'm like, really? There's like all
Yeah.
these other variations of it.
But a lot of people actually said that to me because you can edit videos, you can add captions on it, you can do all these things, but there's not a single AI tool where you literally upload your raw video and it reads through the conversation or the script and then automatically put this gifs, this laughing sound or this animation, everything, and then the output is your edited video. There's nothing.
Right.
I think we might be progressing towards it. Maybe in near
I'm
future,
sure.
is
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. So last question: what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Hmm. I don't know. I tried. Uh, I don't know.
Or maybe you can say what's one of the most important passion outside of your work.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's revolved. You know, I have a wife and two boys, and we've been traveling since about a year and a half, and we've been to 11 countries, and like boys are 11 and 9, and just like uh, I don't know. I don't know if this is really something like no one knows about me, but this is it's really just kind of changed my life and our life and being. And I just if it were up to me, I would just keep doing it. I think my boys want to go home probably after this year. We probably will, but it's just been like really eye opening to me. I mean, really just to see the world, but also realize like I always thought of myself sort of as a minimalist, really. I mean, although we had a pretty big house and all this stuff, but still, we were each living out of a bag, and we have
Mm,
been for a year and a half. And like the less stuff I have, the less stuff I want. And it's just funny because I spent so long like working towards all these things. I was like, oh, I have a summer house here, and I don't want any of that crap. I just want to be able to like do what I want with my day and enjoy my family and traveling around. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, not really to answer your question, but that's kind of what like it's just like this sort of freedom way of living that is it's really just been life changing for us. And I get a lot of people reaching out about that because especially with kids, people sort of dream about it and they don't think it's doable, and uh, it is doable. I mean, it's pretty
Is
amazing.
it great? Well, my questions are finished, but I would love to have a chat later with you at some point to talk about it because I've always fancied a nomad's founder's life, and I'm sure there's multiple people reaching out to you for the same
Yeah.
question, and then we can talk more about it. But Mac, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and packing the last years of building this business and some of the ups and downs. People want to check out or connect with you. What's the website where they can connect with you?
Yeah. And the easiest, best place is probably my name, macmartin.com. And maybe you can spell it out in the show notes. But also, the saasbootstrapper.co is my newsletter. And
Mm,
then on social, I'm most active on Twitter, and my handle is SaaSmakerMac. So
mm.
Mac is a C, MAC. So those are the best places. And yeah, if you sign up for the newsletter, I reply to anyone that replies back to any newsletter. So that's a good
Well,
way to.
you're a subscriber now.
All right. Good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thanks, Ash. It's been really fun.
Perfect. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Mac insightful and inspiring. You can contact or find him on Twitter or LinkedIn or his website, macmartin.com. If you're a founder or industry expert interested in sharing your story on our podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out. Simply email me at ash@artcircles.com and let's connect for a potential interview opportunity. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.